Hello students, welcome to our next lecture on conservation laws of this module. And here we are going to discuss very important concept of specific energy that is widely used and used thoroughly in water resources engineering. We left our last video at a question where I asked you to write the left hand side of Bernoulli's equation for section 1, and I hope you are done with that. So basically we can say that at section 1 if the at any point, so this is our point which is at some height h1 from the top surface. So if we have a total pressure here P1 by gamma, and we assume atmospheric pressure to be zero because that's what we mentioned, that our benchmark is atmospheric pressure, we can say that this H1 is going to be the hydrostatic pressure when it is divided by gamma, or if you remember, gamma times H is the total pressure at point 1 or point A, and we can say that H is equal to P upon gamma, or the hydrostatic head is equal to total pressure divided by gamma. Now, if their datum is defined somewhere in a way that if this happens to be our channel bed, so if I am marking this channel bed as section CC, the distance or elevation of this CC from any datum that we have chosen is D1. We can write that any point which is at height B1 from the bed, total head by virtue of its elevation is D1 plus B1, plus there is some velocity component which we can write as V1 square by 2g, plus there is P upon gamma component which we just said that at this point of interest this is going to be H1. So we can write that at section 1 this becomes D1 plus B1 plus V1 square by 2g plus H1. And if between section 1 and section 2 we assume this channel bed to be frictionless, or there are no losses happening between section 1 and section 2, we can write this as D2 plus B2 plus V2 square by 2g plus H2. And if we see this term H1 plus B1 is nothing but it is the total height of water into that particular section. So if we are here, this is Y1. If we are here, this is equal to Y2. So we can say that sum total of B1 plus H1 is total depth of water at a section under consideration, plus V1 square by 2g plus D1, and this should be equal to D2 plus Y2 plus V2 square by 2g. Now this is a typical Bernoulli's equation that we have written between section 1 and section 2 under consideration here. What we do is that we cleverly define this term specific energy in a way. We say that let us assume that our channel bed is equivalent to datum, and our datum keeps on changing. Why we would do that? The advantages would become clearer as we move forward. But here what we would say is that in this case, we will say that this term as specific energy at section 1, this term as specific energy at section 2, because D1 and D2 are defined with respect to channel bed. Now in the example that we considered, we saw that this section CC is not changing its slope. So we can clearly see that since D1 equal to D2, our specific energy at section 1 and section 2 are equal. And from now on, we are going to widely used Y1 plus V1 square by 2g to characterize the energy or specific energy characteristics at any cross section in the channel. How it would be used? Let us look into another specific example. Now, instead of our bed remaining horizontal, let us say that this is again a flat channel bed on which water is flowing. So this is our top surface of water, and we have some water here. Now there is some bump into this channel gradually. So there is some rise that we have constructed so that water can go from here. The question that we would like to analyze here is that now water was flowing at some depth y1. Now this water either can go straight without changing its trajectory, or it can go upwards, or it can go downwards. We really don't know how it is going to behave until we look into this particular system. So these are the kind of questions that specific energy representation would help us answer, that once there is some change in channel bed, or there is some restriction into cross section of a channel, how our water profiles are going to evolve. Second thing is that we would also want to see that what happens to specific energy whenever there is a formation of hydraulic jump. And we will use the terminologies associated with specific energy widely to characterize that what are the conditions we need for hydraulic jump to form, or what is the relation between velocity and depth at that point, and so on. Now, with this understanding, let us try to write the expressions again at section 1.1 and section 2.2 of Bernoulli's equation and then specific energy. Now you can clearly see that if there is some change in height z1, and if we assume there is no loss that has happened, this is totally frictionless surface, we can write at section 1.1 that left hand side of Bernoulli's equation would look like y1 plus d1 plus v1 square by 2g, where d1 is the elevation of this bed with respect to some standard datum. And since there are no losses, we can write v2 plus d2 plus v2 square by 2g, assuming again no loss condition. I'm iterating it again and again because as we get more realistic, we would consider loss conditions also. Now, when we talk about specific energy, we can say that specific energy here would be equal to E1 plus D1 equal to E2 plus D2, or we can say that E1 minus E2 is equal to D2 minus D1. And if we talk about D2, our D2 is at the height of D1 plus Z1, and at section 2 we have height of D1 as minus D1, which implies our net change in specific energy between section 1 and section 2 is equal to the height of this bump. Now this would help us derive the profiles where I started this question, but before we go there, let us try to see some of the mathematical behavior of this E. Now that we are clear that we have y1 plus v1 square by 2g equal to E, we can always write this velocity as q divided by a, its square, divided by 2g equal to E. Now we can define a quantity called as small q, which is q divided by total width for rectangular channel, and all the derivations that we will do initially, they would be for rectangular channel. So we can again write this as y1 plus q by b can be written as q into b divided by b into y, and its square divided by 2g. Of course, this would cancel out and this is equal to E. So we can write this as q square upon 2g equal to ey square minus e cube upon simplification at section 1. I am just dropping this subscript 1 from here because we are talking at a particular cross section. And we can further write this equation as e minus y into y square equal to q square divided by 2g. And you clearly see that this equation is of form xy equal to c if we say that our discharge is constant and our channel is prismatic. That means that this small q is not changing as we are proceeding along the channel. That means the cross-sectional properties are fixed. Now, if you look at this property, this resembles that it would trace some higher order curve, and when we plot the curve of specific energy with respect to height, you should get three solutions because this is a third order polynomial. We have seen that the first polynomial or first solution is going to be negative and we would have two positive solutions. Now we are going to discard the negative solution because we cannot have negative value of discharge and there would be two values associated with this particular equation. So we will try to see that how they look like. This is how our variation in E with respect to Y is going to look like. So what we are saying here at this point, if we are at, so this is our line where entire head is represented by Y, of course. This is the component which is coming with because of velocity. So if this is the head associated, so this is the line where Y is equal to Y basically, and this is the total value of specific energy is Y plus V square by 2G, out of which Y is coming from the by virtue of the depth of water at given section and velocity square by 2G is the velocity head. Now when we move somewhere here on this curve, you can clearly see that the depth of water has increased and we will mark it here that this is our new depth y2, but the velocity has decreased because this is for given q, this is the variation in specific energy and this is equal to v square by 2g. Now corresponding to the same amount of specific energy we will have another point on this curve and here we will have some depth which is lesser and we will have some velocity head which is of course greater than what we had here. So if I am marking this section in red versus I am marking section in green, I can clearly say that velocity at section marked in green is greater than section or velocity at section marked in red is greater than velocity of section marked in green. And this also makes sense because along this curve, our discharge and hence per unit discharge is constant y q is equal to c some value. So if we have a cross section which is rectangular and we have to pass certain discharge from this cross section, if we know height and velocity, if we decrease y, our velocity should increase because that's what our continuity equation says that v1 a1 equal to v2 a2. And if there are no losses happening on the way and we are applying conservation of mass, if velocity decreases, area has to increase. And if area decreases, then velocity has to increase. And that is exactly what this specific energy curve is giving us. Now, another interesting thing that you should notice into this curve is that while all the points they have two heights or two elevations corresponding to one measure of specific energy, but there is one specific point where energy is lowest. This is E minimum, and there is only one unique height associated with this. We call this unique point as the critical point, and the depth corresponding to this critical point is known as critical depth. And this critical depth would play a very significant role when we will go to discussions on hydraulic jump. Also, the portion of curve which is above this point classified as critical depth represent the area where your height is greater but velocity is lesser. After this point, you see that your velocity keeps on decreasing as elevation is increasing, and we call this region that I have just highlighted in yellow as area of subcritical flow. Similarly, if we talk about the area that I am highlighting in blue, where velocity increases and height decreases, and which falls below this point of transition or critical depth as subcritical flow or a supercritical flow. And again, this is going to be very important concept: supercritical, subcritical, and critical depths. And so if it's a supercritical flow, we will have the equivalent depth at which flow is happening as supercritical depth. And these three concepts are going to be very important when we would go into our further discussions on water resources engineering. Now let us discuss a few salient points about this critical point. In one of the big lectures, I mentioned that in case of pipe flow, we always talk about Reynolds number. In case of open channel flow, we talk about Froude number. And this Froude number is defined as ratio of velocity divided by acceleration due to gravity and hydraulic depth. In case of rectangular channel, we say that this hydraulic depth is equal to cross-sectional area divided by width of top of the cross section, and this is what we defined also. So we can write this area as by divided by b. So our critical depth in case of rectangular channel is simply the depth of flow, and hence Froude number becomes v root gy. And in case of critical flow, we will also derive that corresponding to minimum energy or specific energy, this Froude number is equal to 1. And if Froude number is greater than 1, we would say that velocity is higher comparison to depth, and we would typically mean we are somewhere in blue region. So if our Froude number is greater than 1, our flow would be supercritical. If our Froude number is equal to 1, our flow would be critical. And if our Froude number is less than 1, our flow would be subcritical. And now you can relate to it that the probability that we will have formation of hydraulic jump is that when our flow is somewhere is subcritical, our flow is supercritical, that is velocity is high, and ultimately it wants to join the depth of water which is higher here. So this is y1 happening as supercritical, and it wants to join the subcritical flow downstream, and that would give us ideal conditions for formation of the hydraulic jump. Now this curve is plotted between y and e, and I would request you to spend some time thinking about it, that what happens between these sections. And in the example that we were talking just before, we can clearly see that between section 1 and section 2, our specific energy is decreasing because our Q is same, so Q remains constant. And we saw that between section 1 and 2, there is some loss of specific energy because your E1 is equal to E2 plus Z1, or the amount of specific energy we had at section E1 is greater than E2 because Z1 is greater than 0. Hence, we can say that at section 1, if this was the point, this was the depth corresponding to section 1, for specific energy to decrease, we should move in this direction. We should move in backward direction so that our specific energy decreases at section 2. So our section 2 specific energy should be somewhere either at this point or it is at this point that I am just highlighting now. And the difference between specific energy of point 1 and point 2 is going to be equal to the height of this jump, which in this case is Z1. And as we know this Z1, we can easily determine that if we know the specific energy versus this depth relationship, that what is going to be our new depth. And it is very clear that in this case, since specific energy is decreasing, and if our initial flow was subcritical, it would either it will go in this direction, would become equal to some lesser value, and it can either go with this point or this point. And we will talk about that out of these two solutions, which one is feasible or not. But as the common sense would say that going from all the way till here, it would find a stable state here. So our new depth is still going to be subcritical with the value of y2, where y2 is lesser than y1. On the other hand, if our flow at section 1 would have been at some lower value of velocity of depth but at higher velocity, then we can say that if our initial point was somewhere here, that this was our depth of flow at section 1 and there is some change in specific energy under no loss condition. So we can clearly see that the velocity of flow would decrease, but the elevation will increase. And hence, just by looking at this specific energy curve, we can clearly tell that once this flow passes a bump on the bed of the channel, whether it is going to use profile A or it is going to stay same or it is going to take the same profile, and this is what we call as the physics of flowing fluid. Now with this energy, with this understanding, we are all set to move into our next discussions where we will look into some specific examples of channel transitions. Here we just talked about one transition where the bump or height is increasing, and we will derive a mathematical relationship to identify why indeed depth of water should increase or decrease whenever it passes a bump. Also, we could have channel restrictions or constrictions. So once channel is restricted, how the upstream water would be affected. Those are the things that we are going to discuss into our next discussions. And finally, we will conclude this module on the discussions on formation of hydraulic jump and what is the relationship between depth of flow and Froude number, and that is how we can determine that if hydraulic jump happens, that if this is y1, what would be the depth after hydraulic jump has taken place. Thank you.